The Jewish Story. This week's story from the Holocaust is taken from the book Poland Revisited, From Oswiecim to Auschwitz, written by Moshe Weiss. Majdanek. At noon we arrived at Majdanek, 6 miles from the center of Lublin. The camp is now a well-kept museum to which hundreds of visitors come daily. On display are huge showcases filled with mountains of shoes, clothing, valises, women's hair. A round umbrella-shaped roof has recently been installed over a large area piled with human ashes. An attached sign tells the story. Here the ashes of the victims of the camp are deposited. The gas chambers in which thousands of people were asphyxiated were also on view. The sign says 25 nations were victims here, among them Russians and Jews. Another sign inside the camp gives this information. On the 3rd of November 1943, 18,400 Jews were shot in this place. How could a single visitor take all this in? I recited a chapter of Psalms and a prayer in memory of the dead. Majdanek was set up by the Germans in 1941 to serve as a camp for the internment of prisoners of war. Soon after, Jews were transported there from Czechoslovakia, France and Greece. In the spring of 1942, gas chambers and crematoria were built, and Jews from Poland were brought to Majdanek, particularly from the areas of Warsaw and Białystok. According to the museum guide at Majdanek, the transports of Polish Jews who were brought to the camp in early 1942 were part of what was called Action Reinhard. 3,000 Lublin Jews were selected for immediate execution. On April the 20th, 1942, they were forced to march to Majdanek from the nearby ghetto in Majdanek. The entire group spent the first night in 3 or 4 stables. The SS selected between 200 and 300 men they deemed fit for work and moved them to the camp. The rest, women, children, the aged and infirm, were taken in trucks to a forest about 12 kilometers from Majdanek in the direction of Lvov. There they were stripped of their clothing and possessions and shot to death. 2 weeks later, camp leaders selected 2,500 people sick with typhus and marched them to Compound 3. That night they were transported to Kropiecki forest and shot. This was how the Nazis cured typhus at Majdanek. I asked the guide for details about the sign I had noticed, the shooting of the 18,400 Jews on November the 3rd, 1943. This particular operation was known as Erntfest, he told us, Harvest Festival. In the autumn of 1943, the Nazis were greatly concerned about the uprisings in the Warsaw and Białystok ghettos, as well as about the rebellions in the death camps of Sobowór and Treblinka. Himmler ordered the liquidation of all the Jews in the Lublin area. In October 1943, 300 Jews were divided into 2 groups and set to work in 12-hour shifts, digging ditches. SS men began to arrive from Auschwitz, Krakow, Warsaw, Radom, Lvov and Lublin, a total of about 100 officers, known as Sonderkommandos. On the night of November the 2nd, 2 trucks equipped with loudspeakers were brought into the camp. One was placed at the entrance, and the other alongside the ditches. That night thousands of Jews were forced out of the barracks. Police dogs sniffed out those who attempted to flee or to hide. Men and women were stripped naked and taken in separate groups of 100 to the ditches. Music blasted from the truck's loudspeakers. The condemned passed between the rows of SS men who shoved them into the ditches in groups of 10. They were forced to lie down as the Sonderkommandos shot them. Then the next groups of 10 was forced to lie on top of the corpses, and they too were shot. This action continued from 7 in the morning, barely interrupted at 5 in the afternoon, when the exhausted first shift of Nazis went off to dinner, and was replaced by fresh murderers. The action was carried out to the accompaniment of the truck's music until the ditches were filled and over 18,000 Jews were dead, men and women, in separate ditches. That day, November the 3rd, 1943, became known as Bloody Wednesday. In addition to the 18,400 killed at Majdanek, another 18,000 were murdered at Poniatowa and 10,000 at Trauniki. November the 3rd, 1943 was also a black day for the Jews at Majdanek, who survived the massacre, many of whom became depressed and apathetic as a similar fate seemed to loom over them. The number of human beings processed by the Nazi killing machine in a single day was simply staggering. During the war, over 250,000 Jews perished in Majdanek, the guide said. Please pass on this story.